All right, hello and welcome to episode 5 of the SOC Level 2 pathway of TryHackMe, where we are going down the Advanced Splunk module. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about setting up a SOC Lab or a Security Operations Center lab. And this is a pretty in-depth room right here. So, setting up the lab, deploying on a Linux server, interacting with this command line, ingesting data, configuring the forwarder on Linux, and installing on Windows, and then configuring the forwarder, ingesting Windows logs, so on and so forth. So it's going to be a pretty hefty room, and it has a lot to do with data forwarding. Up until now, we've been doing a lot of data ingestion with log files and kind of parsing and filtering through log files. Now we're going to be deploying these things from servers and configuring the forwarder from Splunk, which forwards data from an endpoint to Splunk for ingestion and parsing and filtering, so on and so forth. So it's going to be a good one, and all of the previous Splunk videos have been distributed on this channel already. So if you haven't seen any of the beginner stuff that's on Splunk and just the intro to Splunk and everything like that, I would highly recommend that you go through those videos first before we go through this one, because this is, as you can see, it's been ranked medium. So up until now, most things have been ranked easy. The last video was ranked medium. And then this is a subscriber only room, which means that you need to have but really the only paid subscription that's available on TryHackMe. Everything, most other rooms are free. There are probably over 300 rooms that are free on TryHackMe, and they include virtual machines and attack boxes and a lot of practical exercises that you can do. But this one specifically requires a paid subscription to TryHackMe. So there's a link in the description below that you can use to get yourself a discount on the paid subscription. And apart from that, you can just take advantage of this video directly or use all of the other videos that will come out on this particular module for Splunk and everything else that we already have on the channel for Splunk. So without further ado, let us jump into the introduction of this room. Okay, so the intro here just throws us deep into, or immediately into, a scenario, and right here it says Jasmine, the owner of Coffee, had reported a potential data breach resulting in her secret recipe getting stolen by James from the IT department. Before the recipe could get into the hands of the competitors, he was apprehended after finding undeniable evidence in his laptop thanks to the forensics team quick investigation. Now Jasmine wants to develop an in-house SOC capability for continuously monitoring the critical logs and events. To keep an eye on all the activities within the network, she has contacted our team to provide an on-premises resource who can set up a SIM locally and ingest necessary logs from different log sources. Our choice of SIM is Splunk for this activity, and you're tasked with installing and configuring Splunk and integrating the log sources on Linux and Windows OS. So you need the intro to SIM as a prerequisite and Splunk basics, which are both available on this channel if you haven't watched them already. So those are two videos that are already available. And we're going to be going over two virtual machines. There's going to be a Linux and a Windows virtual machine. And our job is to install Splunk on both of the machines and integrate and import logs sources on each server through either listening ports or by installing forwarders. So we're going to be doing a deep dive into the Splunk installation process, how to install and configure Splunk in Linux and Windows, and how to integrate different log sources into Splunk. These are our learning objectives for this room. So let's look at setting up a lab for Splunk. All right, what we know so far is that Splunk allows us to collect, analyze, and correlate logs in a centralized server in real time. And what you would need to do before you can do anything else is you would need to install Splunk. And there is the Linux lab that we have here, and there's the Windows lab that we have here that we would go through to essentially install Splunk. And there isn't much on the instructions as far as this is concerned. So, I'm literally just going to click complete so that we can move on to the next one. There's the deployment on a Linux server. That is actually important, and I've already started the Linux machine. So for this, we're going to really basically go through the instructions. I think a lot of the stuff has already been done, specifically on this thing, unless we would need to go ahead and download the files, which I highly doubt would actually be the case. But the installers and everything should already be downloaded, and all we would need to do is just go through the process to make sure that they do get installed. So that's really, I think, what we're going to do. I'm just going to make sure, but I feel like that's exactly what we're going to do. Okay, yeah, so the installers have already been downloaded on this Linux machine, so I am going to just basically just follow these instructions. Instead of reading through all the instructions and then implementing them, I'm going to do them in real time so that you can just see how everything's going. And I have this open on my secondary monitor, and we're going to use this specific monitor for all of our commands. So I'll be able to zoom in a little bit and make it a little bit easier for you to see what is going on here. So here we go. So first and foremost, we got to get into our downloads folder. So this is originally where they dropped me in, was the main home folder. And inside of the home folder, we have downloads, and inside of that folder, we have the Splunk folder. So inside of our Splunk folder, we have our two files. We have the installer file, and then we have the forwarder file, which are both zip files. So the first thing that we need to do, it seems to be that we need to run the su to change to the root user before actually applying any commands. So it will be sudo su, and now you see that it changed from Ubuntu Kafali to root Kafali. So now we are the official root user in this case. So first and foremost, we have to unzip the file, right? So it's the file itself, I believe, is called tar. So based on the command that they're giving us, is called tar xvzf, and then Splunk installer.tgz, and you press enter, and it starts unzipping all the files, and it starts completing the installation for us. This should take a little bit of time, and then once the installation complete, a new folder named Splunk is going to be created as shown below, and it's going to be inside of our current working directory, the directory that we're in. And then once we have that, we can move to the next piece of this process. Okay, cool. That took maybe like 2 minutes to complete, and now we can go inside of our opt directory, or I think we actually need to move the folder that we have. So there's a new folder, as you can see right here, a folder right here. We want to move that into our opt directory. So the command is mv for move, and then we're going to do the file that we want to move, or the folder that we want to move, and we want to do the place that we want to move it to. We're moving Splunk to the opt directory. And now if I run ls again, we'll see that it no longer exists here. So once we have done that, we want to start Splunk, as we can as the instructions basically guide us. I'm literally just going line by line with whatever the instructions are inside of this room. So instead of just reading all the stuff, I'm just doing the commands and kind of narrating the whole process for you. So we've just finished moving our directory for the installation, and since we have now done that, we can now go to the directory for where we just moved the Splunk file. So we see that inside of the opt directory, there's a directory called Splunk, and if we go inside of Splunk, there is now a set of other directories that we can use, and there's one in particular which is the bin directory. So we're going to go inside of the bin directory inside Splunk, and from here we want to run the command. So if I run this, you'll see that there's a bunch of stuff in here, and there's one in particular that we want to run, which is this thing right here. This is an actual script. The stuff that you see in blue are directories, and everything else is either some kind of an executable or a file that we can run. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to do ./Splunk. Let me actually clear this so it brings it up to the top of the screen. So we're going to do ./Splunk, and then we're going to do start, and then -- accept license. And that's what's going to happen to start Splunk. So ./ is the way that you can run any executable or any script inside of Linux. And then the command after that is start, which I would presume is just one of the inherent commands that runs with this particular executable. And then we're going to do accept license because we just want to accept the license and move forward with it. So now we want to create our administrator username and password. So it's going to be Splunk admin based on what the instructions here tell me, or what they did, I guess. I could probably do anything at this point. And then for the password, I'm just going to do password exclamation, and password is going to be with a capital P. Alright, now that that's done, we can access our Splunk server either through this URL or this URL. Either one works. So I'm just going to open up a browser here, and I'm going to go to that URL. And if you're using your own machine to connect via VPN to this particular machine, instead of the attack box or instead of the local Linux machine inside of TryHackMe, you would have to go to the one that is at the IP address that they assigned you. So if I go here, it'll show me right down here, there's the IP address that they assigned me right here. And if you're using your own computer to connect via VPN, you would have to go here. But if you're using the virtual machine, you can just go to this particular address. So that's what I'm using, and I'm going to use that. And that's the address, basically. So Coffee, which is our machine name, or I guess host name, :8000, which is the default port for Splunk. And then that brings us here for our username and password. And that's it. Just like that, we are logged into our Splunk server. So pretty straightforward, really easy if you know the commands especially. And the question here is, what is the default port for Splunk? And it is 8000 for our default port. So just like that, we have now finished installation of Splunk, deployed Splunk, as they say, on our Linux server. So now let's kind of mess around with Splunk in the CLI, in the command line of Linux, and see how that plays out. Alright, so the first few commands, or the first command at the very least, we've already done. And you would essentially run the commands in whatever the directory is that you installed Splunk or moved that Splunk folder to. And it starts with, so we're already in the directory, assuming that we're already in the directory. You would do -bin or ./bin Splunk. And you could also already be inside of the bin folder, and then you could just do ./Splunk. So whatever that is, then you would do start. And this is exactly what we just did. And it opens the port, so on and so forth. And then it says the Splunk interface is available at this web address, and then you can go use your web browser to get access to it. If you don't have access to a web browser for whatever reason, or you're using the version of Linux that's just command line driven, then the rest of the commands will also work for you. So we did Splunk start, we started it. You could do Splunk stop to stop Splunk, and it's the same thing, right? ./bin Splunk stop, and then it'll just stop it. And then you can do Splunk restart. So this is assuming that it's already started and it's already running. Then you can restart the Splunk server. So it stops all the running Splunk processes and then starts them again. And it's useful when changes have been made to the configuration files, or where the server needs to be restarted for any other reason. And then you have Splunk status. So this is something that I could run right now. And let's do that. Let's just kind of do that, because I don't want to restart the whole thing. It'll take time. What I do want to do is I want to get a status. So I can just go here and go to my terminal real quick, and I'm already inside the bin, so I don't need to do ./bin. I could just do ./Splunk, and I can do status, and it'll give me the status. It says Splunk is running on this process ID, and the helpers are running on this process ID, this ID, etc., etc. So it's running, and it's all good. And I'm just going to clear this up a little bit so that we can have a clean terminal. So it gives us the status. Then you can do Splunk add one shot, and it's used to add a single event on the Splunk index, and it's useful for testing purposes or for adding individual events that may not be part of a larger data stream. So let's just do that for a test. So we'll go zoom in here again, and it's going to be ./Splunk, and what was it? I think it's called add, yeah, very basic, add one shot. You only get one shot. So there you go. So it says hostname validation is disabled. Please see server yada yada yada. So Splunk username is going to be Splunk admin. Password is password. And there we go. And so cannot perform post without a target name to act on. So I would actually need a target name in this instance. So does it tell us what that does? No, it doesn't. So that I don't know how to do. So it says Splunk add one shot and the rest of it should be fine. But in this particular case, I don't know what the target name would be. So I don't have that. So now we can start doing some interactions with Splunk. It's very similar to running a search command inside of the search itself right here. So let's see. You can do a default dashboard. I'm just going to cancel this for now. You can do a search and reporting right here, and you would be taken to the initial search bar that you can go to. And we're going to skip this because we already know our way around. And this is where you would start searching, right? So instead of going through this to search, you can actually search from the command line itself. So I could do something like Splunk search Coffee, and it would search for Coffee. So I'm going to do /Splunk search Coffee and see what it gives us. And so hostname validation is disabled. Please see server for details. And I think they got the same thing right here too. But it says Coffee has the best coffee in town. Coffee, yada yada yada. So for them, it seems to work fine. There needs to be something else that I need to do because I got the same error right here where I tried to do add one shot and it said hostname validation is disabled. Please see server.configuration SSL config and then verify server name for details. So that is not something that we are given in our instructions here, and I don't want to mess anything up, so I'm not going to try to do that by myself, and I'm just going to stay true to these instructions right here. So it says I could do search Coffee, and then there's of course Splunk help that you can run to get the help menu for Splunk, and that's it from running Splunk or using these various commands inside of the command line. It says these are just a few of the many commands that are available. Administrators can use the CLI to manage and configure their Splunk servers more efficiently and effectively. So it says in Splunk, what is the command to search for the term Coffee? So in this case, we're going to do bin Splunk search Coffee because everything that they've ran over here has been from the Splunk folder using bin as a part of it. So that was all good. Now it says use the help command to explore different help options and their syntax. And I might as well, why not? So let's do Splunk help and let's see what we got here. Let's open this up a little more. So we got optional parameters, all these things, yada, yada, yada. And let's go to the top of this. So help command, so you can do help with the individual command, types of command to access this help page, help object, type an object to access the help page, help topic, help commands, and it'll give the full list of CLI commands, help clustering, scheduled clustering, I think, or the search head cluster setup, control or controls, data store, distributed forwarding, so on and so forth. And we'll probably need to work with forwarding. So manage deployments, inputs or input, licensing settings, so on and so forth. So we could do this. I'll just do Splunk help and then do commands to get the help from all of the commands. And then we have all of these commands right here. And there is a good number of commands, buddy. There's a lot of stuff that we can go through here. So you can see that for each one, it gives you an individual thing. So add right here, for example, add was the one that I wanted to do, and I tried to do add one shot, but it gave me that error where it's like you need to fix your configuration file, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff that we can read through here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing it. If you are doing this on your own machine, which I really hope that you are, please feel free to pause this video and go through the various commands and options that you have to see what you can do inside of the Splunk CLI. So let's now talk about data ingestion, which is a big part. Like it's literally Splunk depends on this to be able to run the ingestion of it and to parse files and to filter and search through files. All right, so since Splunk actually needs this data to index and search through and do all these things, we could feed it data from a few different sources. So for example, the operating system logs, web applications, IDS logs, so intrusion detection logs, OS query logs, OS query, which is a very interesting tool that Facebook has developed for querying through operating systems, and I mean it's very, very useful. I already did a video on OS query, so if you don't know what it is or if you don't know how to work with it, I would recommend you search through it and just go watch that video because it's actually super useful. I really like the fact that Facebook created this specific language called OS query, and as the name implies, you can query the OS, right? So depending on which OS you're running, you just query it, and then it'll create logs for you, and then you can use those logs to feed Splunk. But one of the big ones is the forwarder, which means that it can forward data from Linux directly into the Splunk instance. So there are two types of forwarders, and one of them is the heavy forwarder and the other one is the universal forwarder. Heavy forwarders are used when we need to apply a filter, analyze or make changes to the logs at the source before following it to the destination. In this task, we're going to be installing and configuring universal forwarders. So we're not going to be installing and configuring this. Universal forwarders are lightweight, and they get installed on the target host. And the main purpose is to get the logs and send them to Splunk or another forwarder without applying any filters or indexing. It has to be downloaded separately and has to be enabled before use. So we saw that in our downloads folder, there was a second zip file, right? So there was the zip file for actually installing Splunk, and then there's another zip file for installing the universal forwarder. The universal forwarder can be downloaded from the Splunk website, so on and so forth, and this is what it looks like. And since we already have it, I'm just going to go through the installation process for that. And I already have this thing set up in my secondary window. So I'm just going to go to my downloads folder inside of our browser here, and we're going to get that going. So we're going to go back to CD downloads and CD, let's see. Oh, you know what? Since I'm in the root directory, I wonder if I'm even able to find that stuff. So I'm going to do, let me see if I close this, maybe it'll just kick me out of that. So we're going to close the terminal. Oh, maybe it's going to end my instance too. Is it going to end my instance? Okay, no, the instance is already running, so that's good. That's useful. I hope it doesn't stop like randomly in the middle of this entire exercise. Okay, so it's already installed in our downloads folder, so we're just going to go to downloads, and we already have Splunk here, so we're going to go to Splunk, and not Splunk, and there's our forwarder. So we're going to run a similar command as we did before. First, we're going to switch user, and we should be inside of the home Ubuntu downloads. Okay, now it's good to know where the overall downloads folder was, and we're going to do a tar xvzf forwarder. There we go. And that's going to probably take a minute to finish. So we're going to let that run, and we're going to come back. Okay, that was actually pretty quick. And there we go. Now we have a Splunk forwarder. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to move the Splunk forwarder folder to our opt folder, just like that. And it's no longer here. So now we're going to switch to the opt folder, and we're going to switch to the Splunk forwarder folder. There we go. And now inside of the Splunk forwarder folder, we have various other things, just like the bin and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna switch to the bin, and we're gonna run Splunk forwarder start like that, and then it's gonna be accept license, very similar. Oh, you know what? I misread the instruction. So it's not Splunk forwarder. It's actually Splunk, just like that. So start and then accept license. You just have to be inside of the Splunk forwarder bin in order for the Splunk command that we're using right here. So in order for this to run the forwarder, you need to be inside of the forwarder bin, inside of the Splunk bin. So since we're here, we're just going to use the same admin username that we had, and then password, just like that. So that should be it. Oh, I see. I'm setting up a new username and password. Okay, so very good. So it says, what does it say? It says that the default port is already bound, which is 8089. Splunk needs to use this port. Would you like to change ports? And in the sample instructions, they said yes, and they changed it to 8090. And so it's setting the management port to 8090, and it's opening, and so it should be fun. Yeah, very good. So we already have it, and it's exactly the same way that it looks like inside of the instructions as well. And the same question that they asked over here was, what is the default port for the forwarder, which is going to be 8089, and we switched it to 8090. So now I think the last step that we're going to do before we move to Windows is we are going to configure our forwarder, and this is all going to be done through the portal, the interface that we have available on the web browser. So let's do some configuration on the forwarder of Linux. All right, so to make this happen, this is the home page. As soon as you start the web interface, you're going to end up here, and from this portal right here, very home page, very basic initial dashboard, we're going to click on settings, and then we're going to go to forwarding and receiving. And once that loads, we're going to fill in some data here. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to do configure receiving, and then we're going to have forwarding defaults. So based on the instructions that we have here, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to click on this configure receiving button at the bottom, and it's going to ask for a port to listen to. So let me see if this is all good. So once you actually do that, once you've done configure receiving, we need to do new receiving port. So I'm going to click on new receiving port, and then I'm going to dedicate the receiving port, and in this particular case it's going to be port 9997. And there you go, that's all good. And now it says receive data 9997 enabled, and we can click on disable to disable it, or we can click on delete to delete it. But it's basically saying that it's listening on port 9997. So that's the first thing that we have to do. The second thing that we got to do is we got to create an index. And so far, all of the videos that we've done on Splunk, all of this has been done for us, and there's already an index available for us to use. So this time we're not going to set everything up. So we're going to go to settings here, and then we're going to go to indexes, and let me find that real quick. Right here. So we got indexes right here. And based on this, oh, nice. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that's available here. And what we want to do is we want to create our own index. So we click on the new index button on the top right corner, and there's some info that we got to fill in. So for this particular case, we're going to, let me just zoom in here a little bit so you can see what's going on here. So we're going to do Linux host. That's basically it, Linux _ host. And then we're going to click save. All the other stuff we can do a default on. And this is just based on the instructions that TryHackMe is giving us. So we created it, Linux _ host, and I think it should show up here. Yeah, there we go. So we have it here now. It's been created, Linux host. And from here, we can now go back to our command line and create the forwarder. So this is where the rest of the instructions hopefully will actually work pretty easily for us. So we're going to go back inside of this command line. I'm going to clear this just to give us a clean screen. And so by from being inside of the Splunk forwarder bin, so you got to be inside the Splunk forwarder bin, we're going to do Splunk, and we're going to do add forward server, and then we're going to do the IP address of our machine. So this will be different for everybody. It's going to be the IP address of the virtual machine that they gave us, which is in this case the Linux machine, which would be, in your own case, it would be assuming that this is for a different computer other than the virtual machine that you're on TryHackMe with, because it's not going to be the IP address of your own computer. Even if you're using OpenVPN to connect to this, it's not going to be the IP address of your computer. It's the IP address of whatever the machine is that you installed Splunk on, basically. So in this particular case, it's going to be 10.10.24.243, which is what they assigned to me. And then we're going to do the listening port that we assigned, which would be the 9997. So we are now going to do all of this, and then we just press enter. And so it's going to ask for our username, Splunk admin, then password, and added forwarding. So there you go. That's it. It is now complete. So it's going to add the forwarder server, which listens on port 9997, and now we can go and check on our log, right? So Linux stores all the logs in the var /var/log file, and in our case, we're looking for the syslog that's going to be ingested into Splunk, and all the other logs are going to be ingested using the same method. So what we want to do is, while we're still inside of the Splunk, so I'm going to show you where the log folder is, where the log directory is, so you can kind of see how this whole thing works. So we'll still switch to the root user, and then from here we want to go into the var log folder, and from here, if I do ls, you'll see all of these different log files that we have here, right? So you can set this up for basically all of these, but we specifically are going to be setting up the syslog log files to forward into our listening port on Splunk. So the command is going to be ran from the Splunk forwarder bin, right? So just keep all of this in mind. Most of the, or actually I think all of the commands that we're going to be running is going to be done from the Splunk forwarder folder, and specifically this command is going to be done from the bin, and then we got a couple of commands that are going to be done from other folders, but all of it is literally inside of the Splunk folder. So while we're in the bin, we're going to do Splunk, and we're going to do add and monitor. So we're going to add a monitor, and it's going to be from the syslog, right? So that's the full path of the syslog, and we're going to I got to make sure I spell index right, and then it's going to be in the Linux host that we just created. So it's the index Linux host that we just created, and press enter, and it said added monitor of that inside of our Linux host. Perfect. So that is done completely. So the next piece that they have in our instructions is exploring the inputs configuration file, which is going to be inside of our etc bin or etc folder of the Splunk forwarder. So I'm going to go back one. I'm going to go up one, traverse one directory, and right here we see that we have an etc directory as well. So I'm going to cd to the etc directory, and I'll clear this screen so we can see what we got here. So this is all of the stuff that's inside of our etc directory. And then there's a few other levels that we need to go into. We're going to go inside of apps, and then we're going to go search, and then local. So instead of just doing one by one, I'm going to do apps, search, local. And now we are inside of the app search local, and I can do ls, and there's one file, which is the inputs configuration file. So to look at it, I can just do cat, which is a command that will just print whatever's inside of this onto the screen. So it says there's no such, oh, I see. So it's cat inputs with an s dot conf, and there we go. So we have it. It says monitor. So we just added this, right? So we're monitoring the syslog from the var log, and it's going to be sent to the Linux host index, and it's not disabled. So if it was disabled, it would say true here, but it's not disabled, and it's currently running. So that's actually perfect, and that's exactly what we want to be done. So then we can go and check out our logger utility. So I'm going to go up a few levels here, and I think it's one more level actually. So from here, we're going to go back into our bin folder, and from the bin folder, we're going to be able to use something called the logger. So it should already be in here, and it should be under L. So let me see if it's here. Okay, so it's actually not a file that's here. It's literally a command that exists within Splunk, or I guess it's a utility that exists within Splunk. And the way that we can access it, or by the way that we can use it, is by doing the logger command specifically. So we're going to do logger, and they're running it from the basic TryHackMe Coffee account. So I wonder if it's okay if I use it as root, but we're just going to use it as root and see how it goes. So we're going to do logger, and then this is what they put. So Coffee has the best coffee in town. That's what they put. So logger, do that, and press enter. And I mean, I didn't get any kind of error message, so we'll see how this works. So now I should be able to see this inside of our interface, I think. So let's go and see if we can find it inside of our specific interface, which is this thing right here. So let's go see if we can find it here. So the way that we go to our index that we just created is we just go to the search right here, and we'll do index equals, and we did Linux host, just like that. So there we go, index equals Linux host. And from here, we have a bunch of results that have already populated, 712 results that have already populated. And the one that we're looking for in particular, I guess, is the one that says Coffee has the best coffee in town. In the sample that they gave us, so if I go to this thing right here, in this particular sample, it's literally the very top result that is available here. It says Ubuntu Coffee has the best coffee in town. It's a brand new event, index Linux host, so on and so forth. So it's literally at the top of this thing, and it's the very first item. And the way that they found it is they ran it, and they ran Splunk forwarder bin tail #1 var syslog. So the command itself that they're running seems to be tail -1 var log syslog. That seems to be the command that pulls it up. So I wonder if I do that, it'll bring the thing up for us. But it's actually right here. So it's not the very first one, but it's literally in the top section right here. So we have it. So it says Coffee has the best coffee in town, and it's the thing that was just created. So it's not that bad. So we can see that we created a logger. So I guess a log file or a log item is what we just created, and we named it this. So that's what logger does. It creates a log item for you. And that is it for this particular exercise. And actually, I think that was literally the last item on this thing before we move on to Windows. So it was a little bit involved, but the instructions are pretty clear. So if you just follow the instructions one by one, up until the point that we created the index, it was super easy to do. And then we went here and we did add forwarder server, and we just added it to our listening port on our IP address. And then we forwarded the logs that we wanted to monitor. So you do Splunk and then add monitor, and then you do the full path of the syslog file, and you want to add it to the index Linux host, because that's the index that we just created. And then the configuration file will show us that. So we switched to etc apps search local, and inside of that there's one configuration file that existed. And if we just look at the configuration file, this is exactly what we did in our commands. We added a monitor, and the monitor was the syslog, and we added it to the Linux host index that we had created. And then just to test it, we ran the logger command, and we added this string as a log item, and it added it for us. And instead of running this command inside of my terminal, I just went and saw it inside of the actual interface itself, and it showed up as one of the top results of our interface when we checked it out. So pretty cool, pretty fun to do. And now we know how to set up Splunk, how to set up a forwarder, and how to set up our index, and how to set up our listening port, and how to forward a log from the item from the machine that we got into that specific index, so on and so forth. So now it says follow the same steps and ingest the authentication log into the index logs. What is the value in the source type field? So we're going to run the same series of commands that we ran to add the syslog file, but we're going to do it with the authentication log. So I'm going to go here and open my terminal back up, and we're going to zoom in here, and so this is what we got. So we're going to do // add forward server, or not forward server. Is it forward server? No, I'm sorry, it's not forward server. I need to do add monitor, excuse me. So I'm going to do add monitor, and we're going to do var log auth.log. I believe that's the file, right? Yeah, authentication.log, and then we're going to add it to our index, which is Linux host. There we go, and it's all good. And so that was it. So, but the question is asking, what is the value in the source type field? Okay, so I see. This is where it is. So it's actually in source type right here. We have one value, which is our syslog. So the value of this is actually syslog. There we go. And now the next one, it says create a new user named analyst using the command add user analyst. Once created, look at the events generated in Splunk related to the user creation activity. How many events are returned as a result of user creation? So if I go here and I'm trying to find user creation as the activity, and then from there we're going to try to see how many events are there. Okay, so here is what I learned. So I was supposed to, instead of adding a user to Splunk, I was actually just supposed to add a user, just a regular user. So it would be add user analyst like that. Instead of doing it in Splunk or doing it for Splunk, it would just be literally just adding a user to our Linux machine. So we're gonna do that. There you go, and then they created that for us. So we're gonna create the password and make sure that it's all good. And so change enter the new value or enter the so changing the user information for analyst. Press enter, default, full name, default, work phone, default. Default, everything's going to be default. The information is all good, and we have now created our user. So now there should actually be an event here for the user analyst. There it is. So we actually created the analyst. That's what it was. So I was trying to add a user to Splunk, but I was supposed to literally just create a new user. So now it says how many events showed up in this particular case, and it seems to be that there have been, it says 7. So user sbin 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, changed user the information. So I want to say that it is all done. So I'm going to say 7. Let's see if that's right. Not 4. Let's go back. Okay, so it's not 7. So let's see. Okay, so the answer is actually 6, and I'm trying to decipher why the answer is 6. And just from these events, from the various events that have been created, it seems that a lot of them for the add user, right? So for the added user portion, there is 6 events. So there's the first one that has add user analyst, then there's the group added, new group, new user, and then the password change. So all of these things would technically fall under an added user event. And then this very last one is just changing the user analyst information. So it wouldn't technically fall under the added user event. I wish I could actually specifically search for the type of event itself that would be considered an added user, but this was more kind of like trial and error and deductive reasoning. So if you can try to figure out for me why that actually is the case, and instead of 7, why it was 6, or if you got a different number of results. So if you did the same exact thing, but for you it brought up 6 results instead of 7 results, please let me know, because I'd be very interested in finding that out. But the answer itself was 6. And just make sure that you're actually adding a user to the Linux machine instead of adding the user to the Splunk instance, which I think was maybe that was one of the reasons why this is also showing up the way that it is, because maybe now it's finally counting the specific Splunk instance instructions. I don't know. But so finally we have, where's the path of the group that the user is added to after creation. So the path of the group that the user is added to after creation, I think it would be group, right? Isn't it group? So let's see. Yeah, right here. So it says group added to etc group. So that would be where they were added to. So etc group, and there we go. We got it. So there it is for our last Linux exercise for Splunk. And now we can actually move on to the Windows exercise. So let's do that. Alright, so while the machine loads, our Windows machine, I'm just going to kind of read through these instructions. They're very, very similar to the other one, except a little bit more user-friendly, because instead of using the command line to make the installation, you literally just go through the file browser in Windows. Once you've downloaded the file, you go inside of it, and then you have the Splunk instance and a Splunk forwarder, so you just double-click on that, and then it walks you through the installation. And it's going to install it inside of the program file Splunk. I think there's no change we're making to that. It literally just installs it on that. You accept the license agreement, you create the administrator account, and then it runs. And once it actually runs, you just launch the browser with Splunk Enterprise, and it'll open it up for you. And it's installed on port 8000 by default. We can change the port installation process as well. The new browser or the new lab will open in the URL, very similar to the other one, this is the local URL for every machine, 127.0.0.1, or it could be the actual IP address of whatever machine has been assigned to you, or whatever machine you install it on. Then you can access it in that browser. So this is useful to know if you're not using that specific computer. So let's say you've installed it on a different machine, and you want to access it from another machine, like from a remote machine or something like that, you would need to go to whatever IP address that has been installed on. This only works if you're on the actual local machine for it to work. So once you have that, again, you just go here, you log in with the username and password, and it'll bring you here to the dashboard. So it's installed on port 8000, and then we're going to click on add data to see how many data points are there, and then click the monitor option to see what is the first option shown in the monitoring list. So we're going to go through that real quick, and then we'll get the rest of it done. Alright, so here we go. This is our Windows computer. I'm just going to open up File Explorer real quick, and then I'm going to go to Downloads, and there's going to be a Splunk instance. Just double click on that, and it'll open it up for us. And we'll go through that wizard for the installation of this thing. And I mean, it should be pretty simple, because Windows installations are much like simpler than Linux, because you don't have to use a command line, and the wizard that comes with it is very user friendly, because it literally just tells you what's going to be happening, and then you just choose the options that you want to do, and it'll complete the installation for you. So alright, that took a couple of minutes, maybe a minute for it to get here. So we got this. It's going to install automatically in program file Splunk, which is all good. We're just going to click next. The username is going to be the Splunk admin. Password is going to be password. And there we go. And we're going to click next. And we'll create a start menu. Why not? And there we go. All right, so this is probably going to take more than a minute. So I will come back as soon as this is done. All right, yeah, that took a good 5 minutes. So I'll give them this, right? Linux was much faster than Windows. Typically, I think it's because of the GUI and maybe because there are so many processes that are running inside of a Windows machine that it takes much longer than it did on the Linux machine. Literally on the Linux machine, maybe a minute or two, and it was done installing. But we are officially done here, so let's now log into our Splunk instance. There we go. So that should be good. And Internet Explorer hopefully isn't too slow. I'm pretty sure that it is because this is an old version of Windows, so I'm pretty sure this is going to be slow. Oh no, it's Chrome. Good, good, good. Okay, so it's actually using Chrome. That is always helpful. Okay, cool. So we got that. So now, there you go. That should be good. And then I got it. So we're going to click on the Add Data tab here. It says how many methods are there to add data. You can skip this. We have 3 methods to add data. And then on the monitor option, it says what is the first option shown in the monitoring list, and we have local event logs. Okay, perfect. So we are now done with the installation. That took a while, you guys. The wait time for this was pretty gnarly. Okay, so configuring receiving. So very similar to the other one, very similar to Linux. All right, so configuring receiving is actually very similar like the other one. So we're going to go to settings, we're going to go to forwarding and receiving, and same thing here. We're going to do configure receiving, add a new one. So I'm going to click on add new right here, and it's going to ask me for my listening port, which is going to end up being 9997 as it was on the other one. And we're going to save that, and then from here we're going to go to the Splunk forwarder, which is back inside of our downloads folder, and I'm going to double click that, and it's going to start that whole process. And very similar, I mean literally almost identical to the last one, except this one just has a wizard, like a graphic user interface. So it's going to, license agreement accepted. It's going to be an on-premises Splunk enterprise instance, which means it's the actual local computer that you're on. Do the username and password, and then set up the IP address, which is our local IP, 8089, which is going to be the default port. And I think right after that, it's going to ask for our receiving indexer, which is going to be the same thing, and it's going to be listening on port 9997. So the port 8089 is the port that is going to send the information from, the data from, and then, or it's going to forward from. So this is going to be the port that is going to forward from, and this is going to be the port that is going to listen on. And that is basically it. And then after that, it will be done and it will be finished, and we should have one under our clients set up for forward management. We should have something that's already set up, and it'll show everything to us. So question here is, what is the full path in the program files where the Splunk forwarder is installed? And that will finish right here. So let's go. We're going to click on that. We're going to click next. Username is going to be Splunk admin. I don't want to generate a random password. I would like to create my own password. So very good. Click next. Hostname is 127.0.0.1 and 8089. And then receiving is going to be .0.0.1 9997. There we go. And install. So that should take hopefully not too long. And we'll see where it's installed. And it says, what is the default port on which Splunk configures the forwarder, which is 8089. Okay, so it's not 8089, so it's 9997 then. There we go. All right. Okay, so we're just going to wait to see what the path is that is going to install this. I feel like it's going to be program files / Splunk forwarder. but we'll just wait and confirm. All right, there we go. That's done. So we're going to finish that. So it doesn't actually tell us what the path is. So I'm just going to click on this and we're going to be in program files automatically, I think. And so it says Splunk Enterprise, I want to say. That's not it. So I need to go into program files. So we're going to go to this PC. And we're going to go to local disk. And we're going to go to program files. And Splunk Universal Forwarder is what it's going to be. So we'll do this. So we're going to do C program files Splunk Universal Forwarder. All right, there we go. Nicely done. And progress has been made. So we just got a couple more and we're good. So ingesting Windows logs now. To check on our forwarder, we're going to go back to our browser here, and under settings, there's going to be something called forwarder management. So we're going to go to forwarder management, and this is the forwarder that we just finished setting up. So we don't need to do any kind of configuration with that based on what the instructors are telling us. But it does say, so in an actual network, this tab will be filled with all of the hosts and servers configured to send logs to Splunk, and we only have one here. So that's basically, it's like a much milder version and more basic version of what you'll probably see in real life. And so we're going to go to settings again, and we're going to do add data. So it'll show us all of the options to add the data, and then we're going to forward. So we're going to click on settings, we're going to add data, and then we're going to click on forwarder right here. And in the select forwarder section, we're going to click on the host Coffee Lab. So there's only one. So this was it. And as soon as I clicked on it, it went right here to selected host. And that's it. And so the class name, the server class name, we're just going to do Coffee Lab. So Coffee_lab is going to be it. And that's basically it. And so we're going to click on next, and it'll take us to the next piece right here where it says local event logs. We're going to click on local event logs. And for here, so let's see, it says select source. This shows many log sources to choose from. So we're going to do local event logs to configure event logs from the host. And different event logs will appear in the list to choose from. As we know, various event logs are generated by default on the Windows host. More about event logs can be found from the event logs room, which there's a video on this channel. So if you want to go check out the event logs, the Windows event logs video, I would recommend you go check that out if you don't know what that is. So it says, let's select a few of those and move to the next step. So they haven't, so they did what? They did application, security, and system is what it looks like has been selected. So I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to do application, security, and system. And that should be visible. So let me see if I can open this up so it's a little bit easier to manage here. Okay, cool. So this is what it looks like. And so application, security, system, all good. So we're going to click next here. And then creating an index that will store the incoming event logs. So the index itself, once created, select the index from the list and move to the next step. So doesn't really ask me to name the index in this particular case. I think the one that they chose is default. Then you can review and everything will be all good. The index itself actually is win logs right here. So they didn't choose default. It's default over here, but they selected win logs. So we're going to go here and we're going to do our drop down, and let's see, maybe create a new index. Let's try that. We'll do win_logs, save it. All right, so our index is win_logs, the same way that they had it. We'll do review and the information exactly the same. So perfect. And we're going to submit. And that should be done with that. And so now Once that is finished, we can do start searching. So click on start searching and it'll take us to the search app. And if everything goes smoothly, we should receive the event logs immediately. So let's hope so. Let's hope that everything does go smoothly here and we do receive our event logs immediately. So there we go, start searching, and we are here. So index is win event logs and source is win event log. Let's see if that's what the search parameter that they have here, which is exactly what they have here. So that if I just click search for all time, let's see if it'll give us some data here. Okay, that worked. The only thing I did different is I removed this piece right here, the win event log source right here. I just removed that and I left index is win logs, and it brought it for me. And so it says win event log, system security and application, which is exactly what we chose when we were creating our forwarder. So that works perfectly. So now we have these questions here. It says, while selecting the local event logs to monitor, how many event logs are available to select from the list to monitor? So I'm going to click on settings, and where was it? It was forwarder management, I believe. It was not. I think it's actually add data. I can always go back and read the instructions, but sometimes you learn better by trial and error and clicking around. So let's see if it is indeed add data. Yeah, so there we go, and now we click on forward. Okay, cool. And then we'll click on Windows right here, and class name. We'll do test class this time around just to make sure, and then click on next, and local event logs. Here we go, and this is what we're trying to find here, is how many options are here. So there is a total of 5 options. So application, forwarded event, security, setup, and system. So we'll do 5. That should be it. Very good. And now search for the events with event code 4624. What is the value of the field message? So now I can actually go back to my search. So we can go back to where we were originally and disregard all of this stuff. And search for event code 4624. Right? Event code 4624. And there we go. And so it says, what is the question? It says, what is the value of the field message? What is the value of the field message? So let's go down here and find message. Click on that. I mean, there's a lot. An account was successfully logged on. An account was successfully logged on. That is it. Perfect. Okay, cool. So now we got the forwarding done. So what we want to do is we want to ingest web logs. So that's an interesting one as well, because so far we've been forwarding logs from actual machines, and it's also useful to be able to forward logs from a website. So let's see what this is done. All right, setting up the web log ingestion is actually not very different from everything else that we've done. So we're going to go to settings, we're going to go to add data, and then forward. And for our forwarder, we're going to create a new one called web logs. And again, so same host, right? The host itself isn't changing. And the logs themselves are located inside of this directory. So instead of doing local event logs, we're going to do a file and directory, and then we're going to dedicate this specific directory. And in this case, instead of doing an asterisk at the end, they do 2. So web logs are placed in this thing and may contain one or more log files, which will be continuously updated, and we'll be configuring to monitor received log files from this directory. So I guess I can do asterisk for this instead of doing the log file. So let's see what they did log files web service 2. I can always try to find the log files directly. So it's going to be inet pub logs log files. And let's go and look our file explorer to see what we can find. So we're going to do this PC. We're going to do local C. inet pub, logs, log files, and for us is W3 SVC1 is the location for us. So we're going to go back to our Splunk instance here. We're going to do settings. We're going to add data, and our forwarder is going to be this thing. Same thing. Let's just make sure that it clicks properly. Okay, there we go. And the name is going to be web logs. And all of this is going to stay exactly the same. We're going to click on next. And then we're going to click on files and directories. And in the file or directory, we're just going to paste this in here. And then we're going to change it to 1 because that's what the name of it was. And I think everything else is going to be exactly the same as default. And then once we do that, we're going to go next and we're going to do the setting up the source type. And for us is IIS. So we're going to click on select source type and then IIS. So we're going to click next here, select source type and then IIS. There it is. Very good. And everything else should stay default. And so we're going to do a review here. And this is what it looks like here, right? IIS default, it's coming from here, file monitor, so on and so forth. So for them, exactly the same. Web logs, Windows, file monitor, and it's C2, IIS, win logs. Index is default, so let me go back. And for my index, I'm going to do win logs because they did that as well, right? So over here, it doesn't show us this, but they did change their index as well. But we do get it over here where it says the index is win logs. So the index is win logs, the server class name is web logs, and everything else stays the same. So now we're going to do review, and index is all good, everything else is all good, and that's done. So let's go search, and the parameter that they have is index is web logs, source type is IIS. So for me, the index itself is win logs because this is what they freaking said over here. So let's try it. Let's see if it's going to be index is win logs and source is IIS. So let's see. Okay, so it's not web logs for me. It's win logs. And under my source type, I got a new one that says IIS. So if I click on that, it should bring the stuff that's coming in from the website. And then from there, we can kind of parse through the results to find this last question. It says visit this thing, and it will display the history logs of the orders that are made so far and find the flag in one of the logs. So assuming that this is actually working, it should pull that information once I visit that website. So let's first make sure that it actually is pulling the information for us, and it does. Here we go. Excellent. So now from here, we can go ahead and find the information that's available here. So I'm going to copy this thing, and let's go open up a new browser. Okay, so this is the secretflag.html web page, and it says it'll display the history of the log orders made so far. Find the flag in one of the logs. So am I going to be using Splunk for this, or this is what's kind of interesting here. So let's see if I refresh the page. Maybe there will be more items that show up. No, it's still 54 events that showed up. So this part of it doesn't really change anything. And what we're trying to do is find the flag that's been input into this. And I'm going to try to see if I can do like a crafty way of doing it instead of having to search. There we go. Okay, there we go. Get secretflag.html. That one just showed up. So that one is available here. Now I need to try to find that actual flag. Oh, it was literally right here. So there's nothing to click. I just clicked next, and it brought me to this specific log item, and that's the flag, just based on what it shows. I have no idea what this has to do with Splunk. This one kind of feels like it's a little bit irrelevant, but whatever, we got the answer. Coffee Coffee is best in town, and that was the flag. And that's it for the Windows portion of this, and our conclusion is very basic. It just says that we're done, and we are officially done. So congratulations for hanging out with me and making it to the end of this. This was a long room, mostly because of the fact that the load time of the Windows machine was really high, and some of the stuff that I was doing on the Linux machine also took some time to load. So for you, after all the edits are done, it's probably not gonna seem like a very long thing, but it was definitely a long load time for me. So that being said, we are officially done with the setting up a SOC Lab room inside of the Splunk, Advanced Splunk module for the SOC Level 2 pathway of TryHackMe. Alright, hopefully you found this video useful, and if you did, I would very much encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out, and maybe even drop a comment. The comment section is always live. I love seeing new comments come in, and we actually have one right now that I got to respond to, and I respond to all the comments that do come in. If you have a question, I'll respond to your question. I'll try to find the best answer for you, and if I have to, maybe I'll even create a video for you. So these were this is one of the longer responses that I gave. I think there's a few other ones that I gave some pretty long responses to, but if it's a really good question, I'll actually create a video as a response to your question. And yeah, I would just love to see you in the comment section. We'd love to see you as a part of our community. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker / protector. Love, peace, and chicken grease. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you, and I will see you in the next room later.